It's a wild world out there, but some worlds are even wilder. Hi, my name is Tyler Hapney, and you're listening to Dungeons and Dystopias. Thank you for listening. Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Dungeons and Dystopias. I am your game master and host, Tyler Hapney, and I have run hundreds of games of Cyberpunk RED and Dungeons and Dragons, and this podcast is a way for me to reconcile my thoughts on both of those systems. As I mentioned before, last week, we will this week be talking a little bit more about Cyberpunk RED, but more specifically, we are going to be talking a bit about the new single-player mode DLC that just dropped a few weeks ago. I'd say maybe two by this point. So without further ado, let's kind of just get into it. Let's crack this baby open. So single-player mode, for those that don't know, is kind of what it says on the tin. It is a way for you and maybe even your friends to play Cyberpunk RED without needing a game master necessarily, because this book will work as your game master for you. And that is interesting because, I mean, when you think about it, not a lot of gaming systems come out with that sort of thing for play. I mean, Dungeons and Dragons certainly doesn't have a GM-less play option, or at least not one that I really know about. I'm sure there is, but I don't think it's official. But yeah, getting into it, how does solo play in Cyberpunk work? I mean, really, honestly, it feels like a system that would be difficult to come up with. A sort of way to do it GM-less, because there's so many details and so many crazy things that can happen. But from what I've seen, this book seems to do it pretty well. Solo play. What is it? Well, I guess you could consider it mostly GM-less play. But it can be single player, and basically what it means is you have this consultation method in the book where you ask a question. It can be open-ended or closed. They have different ways to determine answers for both, but closed question is like a yes or no, and an open question is something more like, what am I going to find in this warehouse? And for closed questions, you want to assign what looks to be a sort of chance to whatever action you're taking, and then once you roll, you can actually determine whether or not that is successful using the closed question oracle that they have here in the book. So, for instance, if I were to attempt to do something I would consider unlikely, it is 1 to 40. It was a 1d100 roll. If I roll 1 to 40, it's a no. If I roll 41 to 55, it's a no with a complication. 56 to 65, it's a little complicated. 66 to 75, yes with complication. And then yes is a 76 to 100. And obviously, depending on what probability I determine, all of these chances decrease or increase depending on how easy it is to get something. For instance, if I were to do something that was certain, it would be 41 to 100 for yes, which is obviously very high chance of that happening. For investigations, they've come up with a system where for different types of investigations require differing skill checks, differing numbers of skill checks at least. So if you're conducting a simple investigation on something, it would be 3 skill checks. An average investigation is 5, and if you're going to do a investigation that might be a bit more difficult and involved, that is 7 skill checks. So yeah. A lot of stuff going on there. And then, obviously, you've got all those checks to do. If you fail without getting enough checks, you might maybe get a complication or a little bit of failure, maybe. Or you might even have to make some additional rolls, which would cause interesting complications depending on where you're at in the world. So, yeah, I mean, already we're seeing a lot of detail being put in here. I'm only about 16 pages in, and I'm really trying to move quickly through this, because wow, this DLC is over 100 pages in length, which is pretty significant. That's a lot of pages. We have social stuff, which, I mean, obviously, and it is pretty much it looks to be about the same as investigating, with skill checks and other things that kind of come up within the conversation. So, for instance, if to accomplish a goal, uh, you must win the majority of the checks made. For example, if the interaction is going to be a little tough, it might be 5 or so skill checks you need to pass. And in order to get what you want, the edge runner must win 3 or more, which obviously is still all randomly determined. So, yeah, making that a single player thing is pretty easy. Combat, I mean, it's combat. They even say it out loud here in the book that out of everything and all the different like sort of designs and functions and mechanics in Cyberpunk Red, combat is really the easiest one to do for solo DMing. Just because it's just combat, man. It's just combat. You just roll dice and find out who wins. They have a morale system. I believe this is in regular Cyberpunk Red, but this is a really good way to go over it. Is basically, if you're depending on what kind of character you're fighting, so it goes from unsure street rat, so just like some goon, to lost to violence and fully dedicated, which means a cyber psycho, somebody hopped up on drugs, all that stuff. Basically, you can roll a d10 in the middle of a fight to see whether or not this combatant will run and try to end the fight. And depending on how skilled or experienced or on drugs they may be, that chance is either very high or very low. For instance, on an unsure street rat, on a 1 to 9, they're gonna run away. But on a lost to violence, fully dedicated person, they're only running away on a 1 or a 2, which is it's rough. So we got more combat, quick and dirty combat. Talks about hardened enemies, which we already kind of know about. Skill checks. This is interesting. Your edge running crew gains attack checks as follows. You get 1 attack check per member present. This is if you want to make combat real quick. This is a simplified way of doing it. So everyone gets 1 attack check per member present. So if there's 4 people in your group, that's 4 attack checks. And this also includes NPC helpers, such as an exec's team member. So if your exec has a bodyguard, they can also attack. +1 for each member who is hardened, which there's a whole lot of criteria here for hardened. Basically, if they have high stats and are really good at combat, they're probably hardened. +1 for each member who has speedware implanted. So if they've got a Sandevistan or Kereznikov, you get another attack check. And +1 if a member of the crew won the beginning tactics check you make at the start of fight. So if you win that tactics check versus your enemy, then congratulations, you get another attack check allowed. And then the opposition gains attack checks as follows: +1 per mook, +2 per lieutenant, +3 per mini-boss, and +4 per boss. +1 for each member who's hardened, +1 for each member who has speedware implanted, and +1 if a member of the opposition won the tactics check. So about the same. Yeah, there's a lot here. So from that point, pretty much you determine, you make your rolls for either side, and then you determine who wins out of each of these engagements. It's saying that if you have the ability to dodge bullets, you can dodge 1 attack. If you roll a nat 1 on any of your attacks, you lose your next attack check. And you can kind of do that. The idea is to make kind of a table of all the different results and compare and contrast them, and to see who kind of gets hit and who doesn't. Because depending on who rolls highest on either side will determine whether or not they hit or not. And if there is no counter, then that is an automatic hit on your end. So really, honestly, combat now has an easier, I'd say kind of quicker mode. Obviously, it's called quick and dirty, but you get the idea. They also do the exact same thing with net running. And this is a lot like the old ones where it's skill checks that are determined by the number of floors that are on your net architecture. So for 3 to 6 net architecture, like 3 to 6 floor net architecture, it's 3 checks. 7 to 12, it's 5, and 13 floors plus it's 7 checks, which is, I don't know, a pretty good way to do net running. I think it's pretty Regular net running is fast. I mean, not fast. It is not fast. I would argue it's sort of the opposite. Um, but it also, I don't know. I like regular net running. This seems like a quicker way to do it though, and I might probably use it if we're in a instance where I need quick net running. This would probably be the way to do it. Um, Talks about clocks, which I mean, we've kind of talked about, I think, a little bit in the past when it comes to the Tales from the Red missions, but they've been doing a lot of this clock mechanic lately in their recent stuff, which I think is cool. It's a way to create suspense and generally seems to work out. But this one is, of course, they gave a couple of clock examples. Like there's one where it's like a corporate heist where you gotta sneak in and, you know, you might get caught at the end, or there's a bomb that's about to explode, and you get the idea. We've got all these different types of interesting clocks that they sort of give us an example of. They even give us a couple of extra mechanics, like scaling up the difficulty. Instead of removing d6s from the dice pool on a 1, remove them on a 1 or a 6. Or another one is Devil's Luck. An edge runner can remove a d6 of the dice pool to refresh their luck pool. Consider limiting this to 1 time per check. So, you know, there's like some extra mechanics they've added on to the solo play clock, which is, well, it's not anything that we've had yet, and I think that's really interesting. So next up, we get our mission builder, and yeah, this one's pretty simple, to be honest with you. It mostly just kind of gives you the well, how the beat chart, which is, I mean, everyone's kind of experienced the beat chart if you've read through any Game Master material for Cyberpunk Red. And then after that, we get into the real meat and potatoes of this DLC, and that's going to be our random lists. They are everywhere. This thing, we need so many random lists and random things. Let's see, it goes from page 34 to page 90. So we have roughly about 60 pages of tables that you can use to figure out what kind of situation you're going into here in your solo play session. And it features everything from the people of Night City you might meet to the random places you can go. They've got random name generators. They have non-binary name generators for people who are going a little bit more androgynous, I suppose. Handles, random handles. And I think that's cool to have, because a lot of my players sometimes have trouble coming up with handles. We have a random table for NPC moods when you first meet somebody. So really, you can randomize everything with these tables. Like I said, it's 60 pages of tables. They have literally everything that you could possibly imagine running into as a table. And they've got, like, these are some substantial tables. They're not like 1 to 20. A lot of these are like pretty significant in terms of the amount of variety you're facing when you're looking through these. There's so many, I don't exactly need to go through so many of these items, but yeah, I mean, if you're reading through this, I imagine the tables are probably going to be your most used. And then our last little bit of this DLC is, unfortunately, nothing crazy. These are all blank forms for helping yourself keep track of your single-player campaigns. It's just a lot of things you could fill out with information depending on exactly what kind of campaign you're running. But yeah, single-player mode. Really interesting DLC. They suggest not just using it for single player, but also you can technically use it if you're a GM that wants to play the game with your players. You can use it as a GM-less GM-less game tool. You can play with your players and just use this as your game master, and that's really interesting to me. We don't have I know I mentioned it earlier, but we don't have a lot of official tabletop role-playing games out there that have this sort of option with them. Funny enough, I do know that Fallout 2D20 has a similar sort of system, or at least I've been able to do it before on Foundry. So I don't know. Things like this really interest me. I've never actually properly gotten through a GMless campaign, but this is really making me interested in trying that out. Okay, well, now we're going to cover our metaphorical monster of the week here for our last 5 minutes. And of course, now since we're in Cyberpunk, we've spoken a little bit about Arasaka. I want to speak more on a very specific person from Arasaka, not Saburo, not Michiko, not Hanako, but actually, I'd rather talk about this guy named Yorinobu. Yorinobu Arasaka, and anyone who's played Cyberpunk 2077, yes, you recognize that name. But anyone who hasn't, Yorinobu Arasaka is one of the grandchildren for Saburo Arasaka. I believe he was the birth child of Kai Arasaka, who is, of course, no longer with us. There's a whole lot of business that goes into what happened with Kai, but what is important is that Yorinobu is around, and in the 2020s, we had a lot of interesting developments with Yorinobu that has sort of led to, I think, some really interesting conclusions that can be drawn in 2077. So, for instance, Yorinobu in the 2020s hated the Arasaka family line. He did not want to be a part of the company at all. So, in fact, he went out and basically made a Yo-ganger group, a Go-ganger, or whatever you call them, motorcycle club in Japan, basically just criminals that were anti-Arasaka. And this was kind of his role in Cyberpunk 2020 until we find out sometime during the actual bombing of Arasaka Tower that, you know, when the one of the crews goes down to Mikoshi, they find out that Yorinobu has actually been imprisoned in Mikoshi for some time. So now the question is, when did Arasaka get their hands on Yorinobu, and when did they remove his consciousness from his body? And also, is this even still canon? We don't know. There's only a couple of maybe things that allude to it in 2077, but for the most part, we haven't really gotten any follow-up on this whole Yorinobu was in Mikoshi thing that was realized during the 2023 Arasaka incident. But well, what makes it more interesting is Yorinobu's role during Cyberpunk 2077, where he has shown himself to now be a member of the Arasaka family again, brought in to look over Night City's sort of operations or Konpeki Plaza, and he's somehow managed to obtain the relic. And even now, in his older days, he's still very much against Arasaka, as is evidenced by what happens when he goes into power. Like if we go through a specific ending, we find out that once Yorinobu, solidified his power in Arasaka, he pulled them out of a lot of things and lessened Arasaka's global power to the point where Zeta Tech was now able to basically move in and become the bigger players in Night City. So really, honestly, Cyberpunk 2077 is a story about Yorinobu kind of getting back at his dad, and ultimately the ending of Cyberpunk really determines a lot about, well, is Yorinobu successful? I mean, we know in the devil ending, obviously he isn't, and the whole point behind him was to be a body for his grandfather to go into, but you gotta wonder, how much of this did Yorinobu know about going in? Maybe was that why he was trying to sell the relic, so that he could stop his dad from doing this plan? I'm not sure. We don't exactly get any direct answers from Yorinobu's perspective, and that's something I'd really like to see personally. I don't know, maybe a novel or just, I don't know, a short story written by Pondsmith one day. But I just want to know what happened between the 2020s and the 2070s that allowed Yorinobu to come back into the Arasaka fold, and have the ability to get close to something as important as the relic, and to start the whole chain of events that 2077 turns into. Really, honestly, there's just a lot of unanswered questions there, and the same goes with Michiko Arasaka, who we don't really know happened with her, because she also was at a certain point in a position to be against Arasaka, as she was running Danger Gal. and supposedly doing work against Arasaka for the government. So at the end of the day, there's been something that's happened that has made Yorinobu and Michiko return to the Arasaka family, and we don't know what that is by a long shot. We have no idea what that could possibly be, and that is something. It's one of those questions to the Cyberpunk lore that does get to me. I do want to know a little bit more about it. But that'll be it for us this week. Thank you so much for listening, and please try out single player mode if you're interested in Cyberpunk RED. It's only $10. And I'd say it's most definitely worth it because it gives you not only a bunch of ideas for your regular games, but it also might allow you to just play the game on your own sometime. So yeah, really honestly, I'd say that's worth it. All right, I'll see you guys next week. We're going to be talking a bit more about Dungeons and Dragons. I don't exactly know what, but I'm sure I'll figure something out. As for now, my name has been Tyler Hapney. This has been Dungeons and Dystopias, and thank you so much for listening.